friends, my name is Emily and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be sharing with you my December reading wrap-up. I will timestamp things in the description box below. December was my last month with the company that I worked for as a QA. So at the end of November, we went on a trip to Nova Scotia for a family reunion with my partner's family. We stayed with his aunt and uncle in the middle of fucking nowhere, Nova Scotia. I did document on Instagram if you want to see. There's a highlight reel for that. It was a lot of fun. It was beautiful. It was cold. We got to see a lot of different things. It was very different than going in the summer. And then I also got to meet a lot of family. I don't think I met the first time that I went to Nova Scotia. When I got back from that trip, I got thrown into QAing the largest, most expensive website this company has taken on. It's just icky. It's icky. They kept me and they kept everybody because they wanted an experienced QA to QA this big site, but then at the same time, they also don't value our labor and we're looking for cheaper labor and we're outsourcing everybody in the department to Latin America, which is fine. They are paying like above market rate in Latin America. They just don't want to pay Canadians anymore, even though they want to market themselves as this small Canadian company that like they want to market themselves as like the little engine that could. Capitalism is gross and I got to see it at its finest. So the last month was me working on this incredibly intensive, high profile website and training my replacement. And the company didn't make it explicit to any of our Latin American coworkers that they were in fact replacements. And so I kept having to pass off tasks to my replacement. They hadn't been told anything and I wasn't, I guess, really allowed to say anything. And so at a certain point, I kept being like, this is my job until December 30th. All new tasks go to my replacement. I'm saying my replacement, but I was using the person's name. Eventually, my replacement was like, hey, this makes it sound like you're leaving. And I was like, correct. And he's like, why? I was like, because the whole department is being outsourced to Latin America in light of the recession. The company has looked for global opportunities to make this business sustainable for them. I did give like the corporate answer. I could have been a lot blunter, which is an interesting choice on the company's part. Right up until they left, they did not acknowledge that they were firing a bunch of people. It got very yucky and gross, and working there was gross because when you leave a job and you're training your replacement and you're leaving because you're going somewhere bigger, better, more exciting, like you want your replacement to succeed. And it was difficult to like sit there and reassure somebody who's taking my job that they're doing a good job, that they're asking the right questions. Do you know what I mean? Like it puts me in a really gross place. So like I'm trying to be professional and excited for this person who's just taken a job and they've taken a really well-paying job, but they're taking my job. So it was like, it was incredibly shitty. I was in a terrible mood all December. Then I picked up a contract. So I was a volunteer at, I'm not going to name the organization. I was a volunteer for a children's lit festival organization. Then their operations manager quit and they offered me a contract, a 15-hour-a-week contract starting in the new year. I went from being like miserable and knowing that my time at a job that I enjoyed was ending, with people that I love was ending, to having something to look forward to and also having to do some of the work for that job. So I just want to put that in place because I feel like the baggage that you bring to books matters. That really shaped what I was reading. How do I want to do this? I think I'm going to talk about the 6 books that I read for myself. And then I'm going to talk about the children's literature that I am reading for my new contract. Because I know not everyone likes children's literature. There's phenomenal children's lit in here, but let's talk about the adult lit first. At the beginning of December, I reread The Running Man twice. So I had read The Running Man before I went to Nova Scotia. The Running Man was the last book for the patron-exclusive Readrum book club. It is Stephen King under his pen name, Richard Bachman. So these books all deal with the horror of humans. They're still horrific, but there's nothing supernatural about them. So The Running Man is set in a near future where wealth disparity has increased. The poor in America are poorer. There's a reality television network that allows people to earn money by basically stripping themselves of all humanity and becoming really sick forms of entertainment. So like there's run on a treadmill till you die, basically, or have some sort of medical issue for people's entertainment, and they only select contestants that have like heart issues. And then there's the Running Man, which is where it's a high earning reality show where folks are made enemy of the nation. They get money to their family for every day that they survive while being hunted, and it is a run to the death. And so we are following a character who is running to the death. This was an okay read. I did talk about it, I think, in November too, because I read it before I went to Nova Scotia. It's almost like if 1984 and The Hunger Games had a love child, even though it sort of sits in the middle publication-wise of when both of those came out. I would say that other dystopian texts that think about media and wealth and class and race do it better. I think The Hunger Games does everything that's sort of happening in The Running Man better. It is a fun read, but I think in terms of substance, it's not quite there. We also have use of the magical Negro trope, even though the character isn't magical, he's not supernatural. There's a black character who just sort of appears and suddenly solves all of our protagonists' problems and puts himself and his family at risk to move the white protagonist forward in his narrative, which is essentially what the magical Negro character does in supernatural texts. Think John Coffey, Mother Abigail, Dick Halloran from The Shining. Like, those black characters, their magic serves the white protagonist, often at their own expense. That happens here as well. It's fine. I gave it 2.5 stars, like a middle of the road. I wouldn't make it your first Stephen King. I reread that twice, on December 2nd and December 3rd. Then I read Gwendy's Final Task by Stephen King and Richard Chizmar. So this is the third in the Gwendy series. This one has strong Dark Tower overlap, which was kind of fun. So Gwendy is now a politician and she's older. The very first book, she's a child. The second book, she's a young woman, and now she is moving towards old, I would say. And she is experiencing a rapid decrease in her memory. And she's trying to hide this because she's trying to take the button box to space and like launch it into space, so it can't be used to destroy anything. It can't be used for evil. It was depressing, and at a point where life was not great in December work-wise. It was a difficult read. Maybe at some point I'll come back to it. I think it wraps up the series nicely. I appreciate, like objectively, I appreciate how it fits into the Stephen King universe, the Dark Tower world, everything connecting, but I didn't enjoy it because I think of where I was at personally. So I ended up like more emotionally, experientially, giving it a 3 out of 5 stars. At some point I'll have to go back and read all 3 books and reassess that rating, but for now it's a 3-star for me. I finished that on December 3rd and I borrowed it from the library. Then I finished Everyone Knows Your Mother is a Witch by Rivka Galchen. Not sure if that's the pronunciation, but I want to make that a h sound, a soft Galchen. Correct me if I'm wrong. I did 0 research coming into this. So we're in 1618 in the German Duchy of Württemberg, in the town of Leonberg, and we have Katharina Kepler, who's accused of being a witch. She's just a widowed old woman who is nosy and who has like herbal remedies and like old folklore. And because she is an assertive woman, a woman who is, because she's widowed, not tied to any man, she's like this free agent in town, and that is more threatening than anything she does. Like, obviously everybody is superstitious, everybody has little herbal remedies, but because she is like this free agent, not under the thumb of any man, she gets accused of being a witch for like ridiculous things. Like, she walks by a farm and like comments on somebody's pig, and then years later it dies and they were like, she cursed the pig. Obviously she cursed the pig. Like, the things that she's being accused of you can look at as objectively ridiculous. It's funny and it's sort of modern. Like, it's set in 1618, but the way people are talking still feels modern. It is borrowing from historical documents in terms of the events that are taking place, but just the way that the characters sort of think and talk are not historical. So I had really enjoyed this. I thought it was fun. I thought it was funny. I thought Katerina was an interesting, compelling character. And if you are interested in that, I would recommend borrowing it from the library. I really enjoyed the audio format. So I initially tried to read this in physical format and really struggled with it. I ended up putting it down because I was having a hard time getting into it, and then hearing somebody read it, that's when sort of picturing it like The Office started happening, and I was like, oh, like, actually I can see how this works now. I can see how this is funny. Yeah, so I think I would recommend the audiobook over the physical book. So I finished that on December 4th. I rated it 4 out of 5 stars. This came from my TBR. Then we're jumping to mid-December. Shit is terrible at work, and I decided to borrow Payback's a Witch by Lana Harper. It is fantasy romance that sort of feels like young adult, because Lana Harper initially started publishing and writing in the young adult space with also sort of contemporary young adult fantasy. This is the first Witches of Thistlegrove novel. So Harper is working on a series of these, I almost want to say new adult. Just the quality of the writing feels young adult to me, but the graphicness of the sex scenes obviously make it something that you wouldn't necessarily market to children. Not that I'm opposed to children reading sex scenes, especially in this context, actually. That was something that I talked about, or I wrote about. I finished the 3 books that are available in 2023, but I'll talk about it here as well. Like, these feel young adult, but the sex scenes are very sexy, but they're also very consensual, very focused on her pleasure, fairly realistic in terms of like expectations. The love interests aren't a bundle of red flags. Like, I feel like in adult romance, it is fine to have problematic love interests and have that be like the trope that you like. Like, I think all of Tessa Bailey's books, you have these sort of like toxic, possessive men, but they're not marketed to children. Like, if adult women want to step into that fantasy of having like a really controlling love interest, fine, they're adult readers. But if children are picking that up, children who don't have a lot of experience with healthy relationships, that's where I begin to worry. Whereas I feel like this is sexy if young people are wanting to explore spicy reads. Lana Harper is a nice middle ground because all of the relationships are healthy ones. So they're spicy, but they are modeling a healthy relationship. In this case, we have a queer relationship between Emmy and Talia, which is kind of nice that Lana Harper has had queer romance, queer rep in quite a few of her books, with either bisexual or lesbian characters. This is about Emmy Harlow, who comes home to Thistlegrove. This is the first one in the series. So she's come home for this like Triwizard tournament of sorts. The 4 founding families are competing for a prize that doesn't really matter, but it gives them extra power over the town. And historically the Blackwoods win, and so this is about the 3 other families like bonding together and working together to overthrow the Blackwood monopoly on the winning of this contest. And of course Emmy falls in love with the contestant that she's supposed to be judging, Talia, and there's like some loopholes there that they have to wiggle through and still be ethical with. It was fun and light and exactly what I needed at this time. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I borrowed it from the library, and I did listen to it on audio. Then we're gonna go back to the final piece of adult fiction, which is right before Christmas, right as like things were like peak frustration at work. Again, I sought out comfort, I sought out light, and so I borrowed and reread The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. I remember this being a lot of fun, and it was a lot of fun on the reread. Do I have notes on it? Probably not. Yes, I do. Oh, but very few notes. It's an enemies to lovers trope. So we have twins, Olive and I can't remember the twin's name. Not important. The twin is getting married to like this dude bro guy, and she's really into coupons, really into bargains, and so she gets everything bargained and couponed for her wedding, including the seafood buffet that they are serving at the wedding, and only 2 people don't eat it. Olive, I believe because she's allergic, and the love interest enemy to lover romance hero that she hates because he thinks buffets are germ fests. So everybody else gets really graphic food poisoning, and of course Olive and the man whose name I can't remember for reasons go on this non-refundable, free, all-inclusive honeymoon, and they hate each other and they're sort of planning on avoiding each other, and then they end up falling in love because they're on a honeymoon, and you know, they get to spend time together and get to know each other. I wanted a comforting read. I wanted something where I knew where it was going, that I'd read before, because work was chaos, life felt like chaos. I think I forgot to take my medication for a few days in there too, because just everything was chaos, and so I felt like a space cadet and couldn't figure out why until I realized I hadn't taken my medication. Just a lot of things it felt like it was falling apart all before Christmas, and so I just wanted something comforting, and it was comforting. I think I enjoyed it more on the first time through. On the reread, I was a little bit more critical of especially the fallout once they come back from the honeymoon and the sort of ludicrousness there. Like, there's a lot of just like stuff that I didn't need. So I gave it 4 out of 5 stars on the reread, but overall it was exactly what I needed. Then we get into the secret project that has me reading a lot of children's lit. I assume a lot of people are gonna dip at this point, so right here in the middle, I'm going to plug Patreon. This year, Patreon, we are doing the Readrum book club still. We are reading the next 6 books the next 5 books in Stephen King's publication order. We are starting January reading Fairytale, so we're deviating slightly because Fairytale, I feel like, it'll be fun to talk about because we've read The Dark Tower together as a patron book club. We're also going to be doing quarterly mini live streams to talk about each of the 4 novellas in different seasons. So if you're interested in becoming a patron, the link to that is down below. Also this year, patrons are currently voting on a theme for the small book club. The small book club is open to everyone, so starting in February, at the end of February, we'll have our first read for the small book club. Once voting patrons choose a theme and have an opportunity to submit books under that, I'm going to put together a reading list, and we'll get out the reading list for the whole year before February, so that folks can sort of shop ahead, shop used, get on library holds lists. So both of those are happening this year. If you are interested in hearing about a butt ton of children's literature, a lot of it very good, stick around. I am reading a lot of arcs for children's lit coming out in 2023. Not all of it, but a good portion of it. So the first piece of children's lit that I read was a graphic novel called Better Place, written by Duane and illustrated by Shawn Daley. This is a graphic novel about an 8-year-old who is spending a lot of time with his grandfather, who is starting to have some memory issues. The reason that Dylan is spending so much time with his grandfather is because he's been moved from, his mother has moved him from their life to move in with the grandfather to take care of the grandfather. And during the day, the grandfather is watching the child. It becomes clear that the grandfather needs a little bit more help and supervision than the mother can provide, and so she tells him about this retirement home. He wants to go for a drive and visit it himself, and she agrees, and he gets in a car accident and dies. And the little boy is only told that his grandfather went to a better place, and he knows that his grandfather was going to check out this retirement home. And so the graphic novel is Dylan going on this journey to find his grandfather in the better place before somebody finally tells him that actually his grandfather has passed away. It is a non-religious look at death for young people. It does a really good job with the illustrations because the game that Grandpa and Dylan are playing is this like space voyaging adventure, and so the black and white panels in the graphic novel are reality and the colored in ones are the imagination. And I loved seeing the switch between those sequences. I thought it was used really effectively. So not only is it a middle grade, I think appropriate level look at death and what that means, I think it's just also nice to look at. And I think the illustration has been used really effectively within the story. I finished that on December 5th. I gave that 4 out of 5 stars, and this was, how do I want to call this? I guess this is new because this is a secret project new read. I read a picture book. It is considered narrative nonfiction called Jellies in the Belly by McDougall. So this is about sea turtles. Here's the problem I have with it. The story is sort of boring and clunky because it's narrative nonfiction. It doesn't really have a story, but it does attempt to introduce this refrain at the end of each paragraph that has like attempted to give you some information about sea turtles. There's this refrain about jellies in the belly, but the refrain is also clunky and not memorable, and the illustrations are disturbing. I would love to see McDougall illustrate literary horror graphic novels. It would be gorgeous. It would be haunting and perfect. For a children's book, the illustrations are disturbing. However, there is an information portion at the end of this book that I feel like is more effective than the narrative story portion of this picture book. There's activities, there's how to draw one of these horrifying sea turtles. Like if you're a teacher or if you're a parent, it could be fun to do the activities at the back of the book, but the story itself is not great. I'm sorry. I feel like I want both, and I feel like maybe this book should have been just non-fiction. Like either the narrative portion needs to be stronger, it needs to be more poetic, that refrain needs to be more catchy, or it needs to be like wholly non-fiction, I think. I think the blend of the two just doesn't work for me. So I finished that on December 5th. I gave it 2 out of 5 stars, and that is a text for the secret project. Then I read an arc of Get Out and Vote by Elizabeth MacLeod and illustrated by Emily Chu. Publication date is March 2023 from Orca. So this is designed to give 9 to 12-year-olds the tools to think critically about civic engagement and why voting matters. I really liked and appreciated the Canada focus because I've read books like this before for 9 to 12-year-olds that is more America focused. Studies show that if you engage people in politics, thinking politically earlier, they are more likely to vote and be political later. So this is important to do. So I feel like it's important to give, specifically in this context, Canadian kids access to information on voting and politics that is relevant to them, because so much of the nonfiction for kids does come from the States. So I appreciate that this is mostly focused on Canada, but then it also had facts about voting and politics around the world as well. So like other examples of places that maybe do it better or do it different or present an alternative to something that we do in Canada. For example, Australia fines people $25 Canadian for not voting. That means that 95% of Australians show up to the compulsory vote. However, the flip side to this is that it also causes people to show up and vote at random to avoid the fine. So people are not making like engaged choices. And so the book posed this question like, hey, in the last election, both in Canada and the States, we had really, really poor turnouts, like under 50% turnouts. Here's what another country does to get a higher percentage of turnouts to the vote. But here's the flip side. And then it poses a question to the young readers like, what do you think of this? And I really appreciated those moments in the text. I think this is great. I'm excited for this to be in Indigos, to be in libraries, to be in school libraries. I finished on December 10th. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars, and this is a secret project arc. Then I read another arc that's coming out on March 1st, and this is Meet Buffy Sainte-Marie by Elizabeth MacLeod and illustrated by Mike Deas. This is coming out from Scholastic. Again, it's about Buffy Sainte-Marie, who is an Indigenous musician. The powwow rock genre is credited to her, and she is very big into using new technology to educate and share and create. What I really enjoyed about this text was then going and exploring the music of Buffy Sainte-Marie as a small snapshot for kids into this person who has done so much and continues to do so much. It's a really cool little bio text. I would love to maybe find a more adult version of Buffy Sainte-Marie's biography, more information about her that isn't child-friendly. I don't think the illustrations are as cute as some of the, like, personally, I have a taste in illustrations. I like round, soft, stylized illustrations. Like I prefer non-realistic illustrations. Give me something heavily stylized with like a simple color palette, and that's my happy place. So this is more realistic in the illustrations, so that's sort of where it's losing points for me, is that it's not aesthetic. We are at a place where we could give kids objects that are important in content and super aesthetic and like pleasing to look at. If something is fun to look at, like I have very vivid memories of specific illustrations from my own childhood that were engaging and like I kept going back to look at everything there, to look at the more, to find more in every illustration. I am a little bit picky about illustrations in kids' books. So like I said, 4 out of 5 stars because the illustrations are okay. They're not horrifying. I looked at partial samples as well, and there's some pretty terrible slapped together illustrations for kids. Then I read Simon Sort of Says by Erin, which deals with the aftermath of school shooting. So it's important going into this knowing that Simon is the sole survivor of his classmates in a school shooting. Somehow he ended up on the bottom of a pile of children and the rest of the children were dead, but their corpses shielded him. And so he has a lot of PTSD and anxiety that he's dealing with. You need to know that going in. This does not describe graphically what happens. The text alludes to the fact that he has experienced a trauma, survived a trauma for a good amount before we finally have the anniversary of his survival. And that day is spent in like a panic attack, in reliving of the moment. Again, it's not gory, you're not witnessing it firsthand as a reader, but because this is middle grade and middle grade students don't have jobs, adults are purchasing this text, I feel like as an adult, most of my viewers are adults, if you're going to purchase this for a young person, you need to know that that content is in there. Story-wise, this is so funny. It is so darkly funny. Simon and his family have moved to this small town in Nebraska, a place without radio, TV, cell phones, microwaves, and internet because nothing can interfere with the radio telescopes in town. Simon is new, he's starting 7th grade mid-year, so he's a little bit on the outs, and he ends up making 2 friends. One friend is Agate, she is fat in the text words and autistic, and then his other friend is Kevin, who is half Filipino and the son of some of the scientists who work on the telescopes. They come up with this plan because the telescopes haven't received any messaging from outer space. There's no proof that life exists out there, and the scientists are sad. And so the 3 of them cook up this idea to fake a message so that the scientists will get excited again. So that's like the surface plot of what these 3 kids are getting up to. There's also like small town nonsense, like I think it's goats that escape. And so like the whole town gets together to get the animals back in the pen on Agate's farm. Simon ends up training a service dog puppy, and there's like service dog shenanigans. The mother purchased the funeral home. She is a funeral director and mortician. She has one incompetent lackey that came with the place that she can't fire because it's a small town, and she tried that, but then it affected her business, and so she hired him back. And like at one point this terrible transport guy loses a corpse because he forgets to shut the back of the transport vehicle. The father is a deacon at the Catholic church, and the communion is accidentally eaten, so the squirrel accidentally consumes this like blessed sacrament and becomes like a certain percentage full of Jesus, and so they call it Jesus Squirrel, and Jesus Squirrel causes shenanigans. Like, I laughed so hard with this. I want a copy of this when it comes out. It made my favorite books of 2020. I loved this book. Absolutely loved this book. I finished this on December 11th. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars, and this is an arc for The Secret Project. Then I read The Care and Keeping of Grandmas, written by Jennifer Mook-Sang and illustrated by Yong Kang. The author was born in Guyana, South America, and settled in Canada. The illustrator was raised in Singapore and currently lives in Toronto. This book is being published by Penguin Random House. It is what it says on the tin. It's a picture book, and it's a grandchild who is describing like the care and keeping of a grandmother. The grandmother has had to move in with them. As an adult, you see that the child is being a nuisance and bothering grandma as she tries to do things like garden and craft and read and whatever, but the child's like, you have to keep a grandma entertained, you have to keep a grandma watered, you have to keep a grandma walked, you have to so the child is telling us about how they're caring for their grandmother like she's a pet. The illustrations are really soft and cozy. It's through the illustrations that you can see how the child is caring for grandma and annoying her. I really thought this was cute. I think this would be a great book if you have a parent moving into your house. I think this would be a fun read to introduce to your child, to gift to them as a concept, like grandma's moving in. I finished that on December 19th. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars, and this was an arc for The Secret Project. Then I read Just Be by Kari-Lynn Winters and Nahid Kazim. This is published by Tradewind Books. The author is a white woman in Canada. The illustrator is an Iranian Canadian currently living in Montreal. So Bee is an annoying younger sister, and our protagonist, much like Macaulay Culkin in Home Alone, wishes her sister Bee were gone, and then is sad when things aren't as chaotic without Bee, and then they find Bee, and she's like, Bee instantly goes back to destroying things and being a nuisance, and she's like, oh well, I guess I like this. As like a book about sibling relationships and like appreciating your sibling for what they are, even if that sometimes annoys you, I could see that being valuable. As an experience, the illustrations are horrific. I have looked at the illustrator's other works, and she has a very distinct style that I enjoy in other spaces, but in this text, I find them so disturbing and unpleasant to look at. I know that I have bias towards illustrations, and that is a large part of picture books, graphic novels for myself. For my digital notes for this project, I just included the most disturbing image from the picture book as my only note. I can see what this text is trying to teach, and I hate to look at it. I can appreciate the illustrator's style and it works in other contexts, but I don't love it in the context of this picture book. Again, it comes back to my personal taste and what I'm looking for. So I finished this on December 19th. I gave it 2 to 5 stars because again, I can appreciate the messaging, and that is a Secret Project advanced reader copy. Then I read Granny's Kitchen, written by Sadie Smith and illustrated by Ken Daley. Smith is a Canadian of Jamaican descent living in Toronto, ? And Daley, the illustrator, is a Canadian of Dominican descent. He has African Caribbean roots, and that inspires his art. So this is a picture book about Shelly Ann, who lives with her grandmother in Jamaica. Shelly Ann comes to grandma and she's like, I'm hungry, I want this thing. And grandma's like, well, let me teach you how to make it. And so then Shelly Ann tries to make it and it never turns out quite right. So we see her learn various recipes, and they never turn out quite right. And Shelly Ann gets discouraged. And then one day grandma's not feeling well, and so Shelly Ann decides to try and cook her a meal of all of these foods that grandmother has taught her to cook. You know, she does it with love, and she's practiced now because she's made them once before. And she cooks grandma this beautiful meal. And the illustrations are gorgeous. They are vibrant. They are so pleasurable to look at. Like, this is one of those books that I talked about my own reading experience as a kid, like just looking at picture books and just taking everything in. That is a large part of my memories of picture books, is like really soaking up the illustrations. These illustrations would do it for me. They do it for me. I love that we have an alternative family here. We don't see any parents. The grandmother is Shelly Ann's primary caregiver. And there are recipes in the back. All of the recipes that we see Shelly Ann learn to cook with her grandmother, there are recipes in the back. So if you want to try any of these recipes with your little person, they're in the back there. So not only can you read the book and hear about this food that Shelly Ann is learning to cook, you can cook it too, and it becomes like a learning activity with your little person. I finished this on December 19th. I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. I would hands down purchase and gift this to little people of picture book reading age. Then I read Canada Wild, Animals Found Nowhere Else on Earth, written by Maria Birmingham and illustrated by Max McDougall. The publisher is Nimbus Publishing. The author is a white woman from Brampton, Ontario. The illustrator is a white man from Halifax. So this is a piece of nonfiction. You're looking at picture book aged. The illustrations are gorgeous. They are beautiful, they are soft, they are stylized. I kind of appreciate that this sort of elevates this piece of nonfiction. Like, if you think about a lot of nonfiction for this age group, it's like stock images of animals plunked into books with text on it. This feels nicer because they're still realistic drawings of animals, but they're stylized, illustrated images of animals. It feels very giftable. If you have a reader in that age group who likes animals, this feels like a beautiful addition to their library. So we have 12 profiles on 12 Canada exclusive animals. With each one, there's a how is it doing section that is bleak because like every single one is being by climate change. It also has that environmental theme if you want to get your young person thinking about the environment, their environmental impact. The one thing that I will say, like as an adult, is that it does sort of put an emphasis on individual footprint. And while that is valid, I think to get kids to think about their individual footprint, like the advice of turning off your lights when you're not using them, unplugging chargers when you're not using them, like that's really not where the vast majority of issues are with climate change. And so while I guess it's good to teach kids about being conservative with energy, reduce, reuse, recycle. I don't love the emphasis on what the individual can do, but then again, it's for kids. Kids can't vote. So maybe it's a good thing that they're giving it, like it's giving the kids something tangible that they can do. I don't know, maybe I just changed my mind. I don't know. Maybe it would make kids spiral into like hopelessness if it was like, you can't do anything because it's big corporations. So yeah, maybe the individual focus is good, but I just want to point that out. I did give this 5 out of 5 stars. I finished it on December 19th, and this is for The Secret Project. Then I read Smile So Big by Sunshine Kiem Tenasco and illustrated by Chief Ladybird. This is being published by North Winds Press, which is an imprint of Scholastic. The author is an Anishinaabe woman from Quebec. The illustrator is a Chippewa Potawatomi woman who resides in Rama First Nation. So Chala is given a magic mirror from her mom and is taught to look and love what she sees because she has this big smile that she hates. And so she's given this magic mirror and she's taught to really love and appreciate herself. And so she decides to share this magic mirror with all of her friends and have them look at themselves and love the differences that people might make fun of them for, and really love and lean into those little quirks that make them them. I really appreciated the messaging. I liked the illustrations. I thought they were beautiful. And again, I think the messaging of like what makes you different is what makes you special is valuable to have reinforced in this picture book for younger readers. So I finished that on December 19th. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, and this is an arc for The Secret Project. Then I read If My Oak Tree Could Speak, written by Rachel Greening and illustrated by Janice Barber. This is from Tellwell Publishers. The watercolor pencil crayon illustrations are soft and very sweet, and it's basically just an imagining of if various objects could talk. It was fine. I finished that on December 28th. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars, and it's for The Secret Project. Then I read While You Sleep by Jennifer Maruno and illustrated by Miki Sato. Oh my god, it is stunning. It is in the tradition of Goodnight Moon. I'm going to be gifting this to every person who has a baby to be in their baby's library. It's a multimedia illustration, fibers and fabrics and papers and paints layered together to create this really textured looking picture. And it's about all the work that has to be done while the kid sleeps. So again, you can see it sort of in the tradition of Goodnight Moon. The sun has to be polished, and the rainbows have to be charged, and the clouds have to be sewn and mended. So like you need to go to sleep so that the world can be made beautiful and magical for you the next morning, sort of thing. You know, in Goodnight Moon, there's that white mouse in every picture. Like as a kid, I loved looking for the mouse, and I loved looking at all of the like things. There is so much happening like texturally in this book that I feel like it's going to be one of those books. You're looking at people who aren't reading to themselves. So this is something where you're like, your kiddo's going to be on your lap. You're going to be reading it to them. The words are just like nothing. The illustrations are what is it, right? Like I said, I'm gonna gift this to everybody who has a baby. This I finished on December 28th. I rated it 5 out of 5 stars, and it's for The Secret Project. Then I read Dino's Driving by Lynn Leitch and illustrated by Scott Ritchie. It's kind of cute. It's very abrupt, and it doesn't really have a story. Like it's like Brontosaurus rides a bus. Tyrannosaurus Rex gets in a truck. And like it doesn't rhyme. It's just like a list of dinosaurs in various vehicles for seemingly no, oh, Brontosaurus can't drive because she doesn't have a driver's license yet. That's how it ends. Like it lists all of these dinosaurs, and then it's just like, this one can't drive because it doesn't have a driver's license. So it doesn't really have a story. The illustrations are cute, but like it's just listing dinosaurs in vehicles. I mean, I guess if that's your jam, it very much feels like it's targeted at little boys. What do little boys like? Trucks and dinosaurs. I rated it 1 out of 5 stars, and it's for The Secret Project. Then I read Sun in My Tummy by Laura Allery and illustrated by Andrea Blinick. The publisher is again Pajama Press. The illustrations are gorgeous. So this is looking at a simple breakfast of like grains with blueberries and milk. And it's taking you from like seed to oatmeal, from seed to blueberry, from cow to milk. And it's appreciating all the work and steps and energy that goes into the creation of a very simple breakfast. So again, this is still for the same like age group of children who are not reading to themselves, but unlike Dino's Driving, where it's just like a dinosaur in a car, this is like visually stunning and has a message. So I really appreciated this. I finished this on December 28th. I gave it 4 to 5 stars, and this is for the Secret Project. Then I read Ballerina by Rebecca Bender. It's about a misbehaving wiener dog who really just wants to be a ballet dancer. And so we follow her trying to be like squashed into obedience classes, and she just can't. And then they realize that her true calling is ballet, and they should embrace her like desire to not conform, to be obedient. Not sure about that messaging, but it was cute. The illustrations were really cute. Seeing a dog in a tutu, very cute. I finished that on December 28th. I gave it 3 to 5 stars, and it's for the Secret Project. The last book that I read, I really enjoyed as well. It's called Our Farm in the City by Callie Dacos and illustrated by Erin Mercer. It's being published by DC Canada Education Publishing, and it's about an experimental farm in Ottawa City that belongs to all of the people. Basically, it's about like urban farming. This is an experiment farm, but also like if you want to think about growing backyard vegetables, like again, there's an activity that you could do with your kids once you learn about this like urban farming project in the city, which I think is really cool. So not only are you learning about like a real thing that exists in Ottawa that you could presumably visit if you were to take a trip to Ottawa, depending on where you are in Canada. Like, I think it's cool to learn about farming in the city. I have a backyard garden. I think a lot of people got into gardening over the pandemic, so this could be interesting. It could be interesting to read and to sort of, if you're gifting this to a young person, like you could gift them this book and then maybe some seeds, something easy to grow like tomatoes or sunflowers, and like start a little backyard garden with them, you know? I think it could be really cool. There's opportunities for activities alongside reading with this book, and I appreciate that. I finished this on December 29th. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, and it's for the Secret Project. There will be more arcs for the Secret Project in 2023. I have quite a bit of middle grade and young adult literature. Basically, I was picking through this list, eliminating partial samples and picture books, anything that I could read in a short amount of time. I ended up saving a lot of the middle grade to tackle later. Those are all of the books. Welcome to a new year where there's going to be a lot of children's literature. I will continue this format of timestamping and keeping the children's literature to the back half of the videos so that, you know, I know a lot of people aren't here for children's literature, which is fine. We'll see how this goes. I don't know if it's worth it to put the children's literature in its own video, because then there's going to be videos that just tank, like every children's lit video will tank. How much do I care about the algorithm? I don't know. I don't know if I want to tank my channel by just filling it with videos that are guaranteed to tank. So we'll have to play around with this throughout the year. Maybe it just works out better for the algorithm that I do not review the children's lit and just mention that I am reading a bunch of it. Anywho, we'll see. We'll see how this goes. If you made it to the end, leave me a purple heart emoji in the comments and let me know your thoughts on any of the books that I discussed here today. Thank you to my patrons who make videos like this possible. I really appreciate the work that they enable me to do. I have so many fun plans this year with Patreon. I'm so excited for a new year of reading. I'm excited to have this contract. I'm excited to be reading children's literature again, to be thinking critically about children's literature again, to be in the bookish space again. Like, I miss being an Indigo employee. I miss working with the books. So this is sort of allowing me to put my toe back in the bookish waters. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope that you are doing well, that you are staying safe, and I will see you soon with another video. Bye.